Hello and welcome to the concluding chapter of the Infectio project. This is going to be a really quick, just very quick basic comp where we're going to take a look at the renders, review what we created in Cycles or rendered out of Cinema, and we're just going to check out maybe some effects, maybe try out some sort of slight color corrections, that kind of thing. Nothing too glamorous, but first of all, let's take a look at the shots. So I've cached them onto disk, so they should play back. And there we go, we get our nice close-up shot. And the spore's growing nicely. Let's take a look at shot 2. And you can see we've got this kind of stop-motion-y, time-lapsey feel to this. There's a few pops and things, but I'm not too concerned. For our purposes, I think that's going to work nicely. If you do see stuff like that and you want to mitigate it, you can just increase the number of particles. So that would obviously change our sim, but if you want to mitigate that, just increase the number of particles, increase the resolution of the mesh, but that's less important. The jumping is always, or the sort of stop motion-y feel will always come from low numbers of particles, really. There we go, and the filters. Okay, and this is the shot I really love, where it comes up, you get this nice detail. And it's quite a satisfying moment where these edges, these bits meet. There we go. Awesome. Okay, so let's actually start comping these. And first of all, let's drag this down here, and let's put this into pre-comps. I'm going to comp with the last shot because I figured that's the most interesting one. So, okay, what should we do first? Well, we rendered those passes out, those material ID passes, which are sort of a rough pass that you can use to just tweak colors after the render. So let's grab those, and that's these two here. So the 300 and the 301 are those IDs that we set in Cycles, if you recall. Let's drag them both into here. And let's solo one at a time, or let's just check the first one. Now that's so if I actually call this ID, or shot, I should say shot 03, matte ID, and it's 302, which was the fungus mesh. And then this one, if I solo it, I just copy and paste that name. This is the fungus spores. I should say fungal, really. Spores, there we go. Now, currently they're separated. If we want them both together, now we could have given them the same material ID, but it depended if I wanted to color correct individually these things. So if I leave them separate, and let's add an adjustment layer, and we'll call this Mesh CC for color correction. And then I'm just going to grab a hue saturation because that's pretty much the only thing I'm going to be doing with this. And let's make sure that this adjustment layer is utilizing this matte as its track matte, so Luma matte, and nothing happens because we haven't tweaked any of these settings. Now you can see I can tweak this, and it's just tweaking the mesh. If I go back to earlier on, you'll see. Now it's quite a rough, I should put this into higher mode. There we go. Now these IDs, these mattes can be quite rough depending on where they are in the image. If you want to get really perfect alias, nice clean IDs, I'd recommend trying out Cryptomatte, which is a really nice feature, but it would be totally overkill for what I'm doing here, so that's not a problem. And you can see here, like if you got this, green is quite nice actually, that's quite cool. And we can obviously drop the saturation out, that kind of thing, but it's really nice having this control after the render. It's quite a common workflow, this one. Might just I'm going to leave the hue pretty much as I had it. Obviously, one of the advantages of real-time feedback when you're developing materials and lighting is that you're going to be fairly close to what you want. But then if you've got someone else, creative director, whatever, someone wants to change something, you've obviously got that ability to later on. So I'm actually going to maybe increase the saturation a touch. And if you look, I'm going to increase the master lightness, and this is quite a fairly limited thing that you would do normally. Probably you wouldn't use this, but I'm just going to bring it up because it kind of highlights the shape a little bit better and kind of adds to that sort of translucency. See if I turn this adjustment layer on and off. So it just brings up in the really shaded areas like that. It just makes it a little bit more visible. So I like that. Excellent. And if we do the same, if I duplicate that and drop it under the fungus spores, and I'm going to rename this one Spores CC. There we go. And now I can actually adjust these separately. So if I go back down to here, so I can control those separately. But in general, I think I'm gonna make the same adjustment because I liked in terms of how natural they looked. If I turn these adjustment layers off, relative to each other, they're kind of the right tone. Does that make sense? So if I want to combine these two IDs, you just have to pre-comp them together and screen blend them. So if let's just get rid of one of these CCs and let's just call it Fungus CC. And then if we pre-comp these two, so select them both, Control or Command Shift C, and this one is going to be Shot 03 Fungus Matte. There we go. And if I jump into that and make sure that's actually if I hide it as well and show the adjustment layer and then make sure that's Luma, that's correct. Now it's just showing the mesh changing because if you jump into this matte, we're not blending these together. So if I just change that to a screen and we've combined them. Now, of course, you could render out that combined or some kind of inverse workflow. There we go. We can now completely change the color of all of our fungus. Like I said, I don't think I will be. That's quite nice. In a hideous, slightly hideous colorway. There we go. I might increase the saturation a touch more. I don't want to go too much with this because I'm probably going to add some additive bloom effects and stuff. So I don't want to go too much too fast. That's looking pretty cool. Yeah, in fact, let's do that. Let's add a bloom effect to this. So if I just want to when I say bloom effect, actually, I kind of mean a glow to our gross fungus. Maybe it's radioactive fungus. I don't know. In which case, this symbol wouldn't suit. We should have a radioactive one. But either way, let's actually grab the fungus mat and the beauty, and let's duplicate those layers and drag them to the top. And if I solo this, and then I just change the track mat to this fungus mat, go to Luma mat, you'll see we get just the fungus. Now, what I could do here is I could sort of glow that, I could blur it, but we'll want to pre-comp first so that the edges kind of blur as well, or glow, bloom. So I'm going to Control Shift C again. This one's going to be called Shot 03, and what's it going to be called? Fungus Glow. There we go. Could be coloring these layers if you want, but that's fine. And there we go. That's now, just check that's fine. Jump back out to our beauty. Now we add the fast box blur. It's my lazy method of creating a bit of a glow, bit of a bloom. Obviously, there's plenty of ways to do that with plugins and whatnot. For this, I'm just going to try and keep it as simple as possible. So just add a bit of box blur, change it to an add, and then drop it right down, like 20%, something like that. Let's see how it looks. Just want to. There we go. Again, it's kind of all about. Really, it's about subtly highlighting our fungus here. But this is what I wanted to show you in terms of comping this particular project, is that I'm utilizing the IDs that we rendered out to do a few different things. So I've created this soloed out fungus layer, all that kind of stuff. You can do creative stuff as well, of course. You could have type going in and behind objects, amongst objects, that kind of stuff. So that's really our base comp actually finished for this shot. And maybe might give it a vignette around this area here, so this surface isn't quite as large around here and we can still focus on the logo. Yeah, let's do that. So let's jump on the beauty here. Oh no, in fact, I'll add a layer over the top of this. And in fact, something we should be conscious of is this actually has an alpha behind it. So if I put reveal the transparency grid, you can see we have a background. So I can put any color behind here, but I really want to eat away at this thing here. And I should you could re-render that. You could even actually perhaps edit the alpha, but for me, I'm going to just use a simple vignetting just to darken the outside, so we stay focused on the central part. So I'll put a solid behind. We'll call this background. I'll put a solid behind the beauty, and then I'll add another solid, and I'll call this vignette. I'm only creating new solids because I find it easier to manage if you need to remove them all at once. So let's make an ellipse tool here. And if I double click whilst the layer is selected, it'll actually add the vignette, the ellipse or mask over the whole layer. I'm going to invert that. And I'm just going to bring it in a little bit from the edges because it's the edges that I've got a problem with. If you hold Control or Command down whilst you do that, you'll get that nice around the center of the axis there. Transforms. So open up your mask options, and I'm just going to feather it really hot, like very majorly. So it's really soft, maybe 500. And I'm going to expand it a little bit away. Maybe even softer than that, actually. There we go. And I don't want it at the beginning. I want it to only kind of come in pretty much towards the end here. So I'll probably start animating on about halfway through, around about 500 frames. So if I just use opacity for this, drop that down to 0 at this frame. And then by the time we're here, it should just subtly come in. There we go. Might want to scale that in even more, actually. Make it a bit more custom as well, depending on if you want specific areas to be kind of kept untouched. You could just create this somewhat artificial mask, but it does the job. There we go, you can see it kind of coming in. Might even be able to come in quite a bit earlier now, actually. And of course, you could animate the mask transforming, but I think it's fine for what we're doing here. There we go, and then that end frame there. And what I might do, I might actually boost the brightness of that glow so it really stands out. Yeah, there we go. Then we could add a few more effects, maybe sort of flares and things like that, but I'm happy with this for the result of this project. Now, I did take a look at these other shots, and considering it, I'm thinking I'm just going to stick with our main beauty shot for now. If you want to carry on and convert that so that you can do exactly the same process to these, it's quite easy. You just duplicate your shot folder, rename it with whichever one you're gonna process, and then you just change the names on them. Always do that first so that you don't get confused with which layers are which. Then you just double click into the beauty that you need to replace. And this is obviously our main shot here. So we need to start replacing bits that we don't need. So we don't actually need the vignette in this one, but we do need to replace fungus glow. So I'm going to hold Option or Alt whilst I drag it down, and it'll replace it. And you can see it's changed to shot 2. Same with the matte. Same with the beauty. This is all shot 2, remember? So we need the beauty from shot 2. And then if I actually jump into the fungus glow, these are bits we need to replace as well. Just make sure you're on the right layers, of course, when you're replacing these. Shot 2, there we go. And you can see that whatever's inside the matte is still the third shot. So I'll jump into that one as well. And then I just need to replace these two. It actually doesn't matter which order you replace them because the screen is just combining them anyway. So, but I'll do it the same. 3, then 2. And I could go to the end of the timeline here, hit N. Or, yep, there we go. Go back to the beauty. You could trim that down as well, hit N, and then right click, trim comp. And there we go. That's now transferred all of those effects, and you've got your extra shots if you should want them. I'm going to stick with the one shot, and I think I'm going to do a bit of retiming on it in the main comp. So let's jump to the master comp here, and let's just drag our shot 3 in. And what I want to do is I want to give it a bit of a ramp around about here. And then I want it to ramp probably pretty far along the time, probably around about to here, and then carry on going at the same pace. And the easiest way to do that is if you right click in the timeline here, go to time, and then enable time remapping. Now, I remember the command. It's Control Alt T or Command Option T for Mac, and then that'll activate the time remapping on the layer. And then we want to, I think it was about frame 70 that I added the keyframe, add that one there. Now that has not changed anything. The timing is exactly the same. All we've done is add a keyframe at that moment. And they're linear, so the progression from frame to frame is exactly right. And the timeline should match up. So we're on frame 70 and the time remapping is on 70. So that's all good. Now, if I go along to a frame down here, let's say 225, add another keyframe, and then let's switch the view to the graph editor. This is just an easier way to set this one up. And then we're basically going to squash it so that it's going to be much shorter in playtime. So probably about a second after this one. So somewhere about there. I'm just going to hold shift whilst I'm dragging this. If I don't hold shift, it makes it a little bit harder to keep it at its same frame level. Otherwise, you'll shift the time. We just want to squash that up to that point. Let's zoom in a bit. There we go. And then we're just going to work on, I might just nudge it. Oh, I did there. Just about there. So it's on that frame that I've got here. Now, if I play back, it's going to have to process those frames, but it'll be much quicker than the rest of the timeline. Let's just play that back. There we go, much quicker, and then it steadies down. Now, you could leave it like that, but the keyframes aren't very soft, so it's quite abrupt changes in speed. So what I tend to do is I'll cheat to start with. I'll just add a one handle, ease in and ease out on either side here. And then you want to match the angle of the incoming line, but you don't want to change this incoming line. That slope you want to maintain, and then this one out here you want to change on the inside. So we want to give that a good ease in and out. This will create this really sort of quick deceleration and then acceleration back into normal speed. Or vice versa, I should say. Quick acceleration, then deceleration back to normal speed. Okay, so let's play that back. And there you go. So let's just play the timeline. And those spores up. Everything's still growing. There we go. Into the hero position. Okay, so I think we'll need to trim this comp, definitely. Let's jump back to our non-graph editor view. There we go. So that's the last frame. Now, you'll notice it goes black. That's because there's no frames in the comp below at that frame. You can just nudge it back to here. And this is where we'll trim the comp. Hit N, right click, trim to work area. Let's zoom back out. And we have our full shot for our Infectio project. Okay, so I hope that was helpful. And just to show you that it was kind of a quick way to color correct things, you can jump in and use the IDs that we rendered out of cycles just to quickly change the colors of things. Really just tweaking, nice and simple. And like I've said many times before, the beauty of rendering with a render engine like Cycles that has a real-time preview is that you've done a lot of the look dev already. So actually, your compositing time is actually much, much shorter and nice and easy. All right, so I'm going to leave it there. I'm going to render this out and I'll play it after the end of this video. But thanks very much, and I'll see you in the next one.